All right, good evening, everyone. It is March 8th. I can't believe how fast the time is going. And we're going to call to order our meeting for the Strategic Planning Committee. So, Brian, any comments or questions on the meeting minutes from January, as we did not have a meeting in February? If anyone
Nope.
has nope. Any comments, concerns, questions from anybody else? Nope. Okay, we'll just consider those accepted. And we'll move along to the agenda. So, Brian, you're up.
So this evening we have 4 items on the agenda, which are mainly updates to things that we have been talking about before, just some subcommittee updates and things to check in with the group about. So, as we've been going through sort of the strategic plan, obviously we're trying to tie a lot of what we are doing, whether it's projects or action items or spending, back to the pillars that you see on the screen here that were sort of the backbone of both our comprehensive plan and then the other strategic initiatives that we have addressed and discussed with the board. And it really goes back to those strategy indicators that are on that strategic dashboard that's available on the website underneath the school board section. So tonight we're going to be talking about a couple of these items and those agendas. The first being some of the work that a group of teachers and myself and Tasha have been having conversations about supplemental activities and how we approve supplemental activities, how we establish sort of the pay rates for supplemental activities, and what we can do moving forward to address both the sustainability of student activities over time and recognize staff who have been giving who give their time for the school's sort of extracurricular activity, to have a well-rounded extracurricular activity plan. I have an update on the master schedule action items. I wanted to share some of our intent to return and enrollment information. I know that's a conversation that we talk about with the board on a monthly basis, but the intent to return and enrollment sort of drives a lot of things at the school. So I wanted to give an update on where we were at with that, and then Mrs. Weaver's here this evening to give an update on our curriculum management plan and where we were at with that throughout this school year and sort of looking into next year. So first up, we had made one of our goals within our supporting all learners category was for us to conduct a comprehensive review and create an equitable and fair activity supplemental program. So that was something that we had put into our strategic plan as one of the strategies that we wanted to address. So at the beginning of the year, I reached out and a number of teachers formed sort of a subcommittee, and we've met a couple times and started to have conversations about both the history of our supplemental activities, what different districts do under CBA agreements regarding supplemental activities, and what are some different models and hypotheticals approaches to how we might be able to look at our supplemental activities, which is all the extra things that teachers do, and then how we fund those. So as the group kind of looked across and different examples were given from what districts do, most schools and districts look at their activities being based and given certain like points or unit values that are based on time, effort, and intensity. So the amount of time a teacher has to give up, how much effort they have to put in to that particular supplemental activity, and then different types of intensity. Like are there playoffs or competitions or productions that need to go on? Do certain activities have more exposure to parents that has to be taken into consideration? And that each of those activities then are kind of looked at holistically and then given a certain number of points or units, and then those units are sort of multiplied by a pay rate on a scale that then takes into consideration years of experience for the staff within that particular supplemental. And this was something that the group talked about and has been brought up over the years of like, how are we recognizing and addressing staff members who have been in certain supplemental activities? I've been the academic competition coach for 10 years, yet I'm still making around the same amount that I've made for that overall all 10 years. So how are we taking into consideration the length of time that some of our staff are putting into these activities over multiple years, as well as retaining those staff members in those activities? There's expertise, there's knowledge, there's experience that goes along with being coaches for a long time, or being or leading the science fair for multiple years, that we lose as there is churn, just like in any position, that we lose that as staff members kind of turn over in activity supplementals. So one of the examples here that we had sort of talked about and we're looking at is one of the sort of tiered level charts on the right side of your screen. The years of experience mirror what our current athletics program and our coaches in our athletics program experience in terms of tiering. And then the pay per unit dollar amounts were just something that we were kind of exploring and playing with. So like, if we wanted to establish a rated scale that took into consideration years of service and experience, that would be sort of graded an increase over, certain years that supplementals, that a person has been a supplemental activity. So what we did is we looked at the current pay that we have for staff and supplementals, and utilized that as the level 1 base pay. And then we took that dollar amount, and divided it by the lowest pay per unit, which was $2.50 in this hypothetical situation. And that gave us how many units or points each activity was worth. Then what I did is I went through the current list of supplementals, and because feasibility is important. Like, are we actually able to move to a model like this, or is it just not economically feasible for us to do? So I took all of our current teachers and in their supplemental roles, and then worked with human resources to get how many years they had currently been in their supplemental role positions, and applied this hypothetical scenario to the staffing. And then if all things stayed equal moving into next year, I calculated out what the sort of budget difference would be. And it was a price tag of about $12,000 of a difference. That in terms of is that a lot of money? Is it not a lot of money? That's kind of a larger conversation within the larger scope of our budget conversations. But we wanted to see whether or not being able to move to a program like this to recognize our teachers' effort and the time, because a lot of the value add to our school is the extra things that go on. And we want to make sure that we continue to keep that, as well as encourage new activity supplementals based on student interest. And that's sort of one of the last portions of this action group's task is going to be coming up with a uniform system for proposing and approving new supplementals, so things just don't happen on a whim that school administration or staff aren't aware of, and then it come sort of back to us later that a staff member's coming and saying, hey, I've been doing X, Y, and Z and believe I should be compensated for it. So we want to make sure we streamline that process. So we were actually we were supposed to have a meeting yesterday, and I ended up having to reschedule. And this action committee group now is currently going through and doing an individual activity where they're evaluating the current supplementals at their current pay rates, and and going through a data collection tool that we utilize with the staff to sort of get information about time, effort, and intensity, and either justifying that the activities are correctly placed at the base salary amounts, or do some need to have their current contract pay decreased, or do they need to be increased based on feedback from the staff that are currently in those supplemental activities? So that's where the group is at right now, and then hoping to have a little bit more completed as we go through the budget process for the 22-23 school year. So questions on where we're at with that action item or strategy, whatever we want to call it, because that was a goal that we had for this academic year to be going into next year.
Ryan, not now, but would you be able to put together like a more real life scenario that we could actually see the numbers and how they flow across, just so that we can better understand it, visualize it?
Yep, I have it. I just didn't want to.
No, but
Yeah.
I think it sometimes helps to see, like, teacher A makes this, and this is how, just so you can see the full flow of it.
Yep, we can do that. And I did it for all of our current activity supplementals, and then did it for, I did for every activity supplemental, what we would be paying a teacher at the level 1, what that money would be at level 2, level 3, and level 4. Now, some of that, there's variability year to year based on that, how many, if a teacher might be at that, level 4, and then they choose to stop doing it, and then we have somebody else come in the following year at level 1, obviously that's going to change, the overall expense of what our activity supplementals are. But I've done it activity by activity that I can share with everybody.
Yeah, I think if you just pick one, it just helps paint the full picture. That's all. This is good.
Okay. Anything else from anybody? All right. Next up was an update on the ISM consultant conversations that we had. The last time that we had spoke, Dwayne, you had suggested that we interview. We narrowed down the candidates and we interviewed 2 of them. We chose which of the ISM consultants we thought would be a better fit for what we were looking at trying to accomplish, as well as their past experience. Went back to ISM and got an updated agreement, and that's going to be discussed and presented to the board for approval at the meeting next week. So that'll be included in the board packet. And with moving forward, this would be sort of, and in speaking with the consultant and the ISM team, this would kind of be the process that we went through now with some adjusted timelines. So they would be coming for their site visit in the fall. And on our next slide, I'm going to kind of explain what that site visit would look like. Then after the site visit and through into the spring and fall of 2023, we would be reviewing and building different scenarios based on the analysis and evaluation done by ISM. And then in the fall of 2023, kind of having to make a decision. The goal is that they're going to they're going to look at our goals and what we want to accomplish and give us different suggestions and models that we could potentially adopt. But in the fall of 2023 would be really having to make a decision, if one isn't made by then, on adopting a build scenario, and then doing all of the work of ensuring that we can financially sustain it. What type of staffing do we need? So that kind of all goes into the decision-making process. Do we have the space to accommodate any type of these changes? And then in the spring of 2024 would be focusing on teacher professional development in teaching, planning, pedagogy, best practices on adjusting instruction for any type of changed schedule model that we might do. And then we had talked about, and when we met with ISM, we did bring in the idea that we have a building project going on with a potential fall of 2025-ish opening. And they were excited that that was going to be an option that was going to have to kind of be folded into this work, but said that the goal for us would be to try to implement a new schedule at State Road for the fall of 2024 under our current building conditions, but that they would, within their analysis and evaluation, look at the proposed plans for the new building and take that into consideration when they're making any type of when they're doing any type of analysis related to plant management and facilities and room utilization. So they'll kind of do both for us and say, you could launch this in fall of 2024 under your current conditions, or you'd have to wait till fall of 2025 to make this happen, or fall of 2024 might be step one of two steps in making a full transition, but that they would take that building project into consideration during their evaluation period. So the proposed site visit would happen in the fall. A lot of the work that they do is pre-visit work. So by October 10th, per the agreement that's going to be proposed, we would have a whole host of information that we would need to send to ISM. It would include building schematics, room utilization percentages, all of our staffing and their certifications, what our current schedule looks like, how many students do we have, what's the percent load of their current schedules, like all kinds of information. We have to send them that they utilize in sort of a pre-evaluation and analysis of everything that's going on currently at the school, as well as previous years. We would have to send sort of a first round of what are our goals, what do we want to accomplish, what's sort of our idea schedule, how do we put students first in this, and they will review all of that before, so that they have a really good sense of where we are at, where we have been, and where do we want to go. Then in November, on November 10th and 11th, they would conduct virtual interviews and focus groups with students, staff, and parents. I had asked about that being in person, but they had shared that they've actually, through the pandemic, found that they get more participation and that it's been easier for schools to schedule if they are virtual, and they're able to hold them at night much easier, and things during the day are easier to hold because they're not trying to figure out how to cover teachers' schedules and things like that. So they have found that it's just been easier for them to utilize a virtual format for the focus groups and interviews. Along with the focus groups and interviews, there's also student, staff, and parent and community surveying that they will conduct, and they conduct that to gather feedback and information. Then on November 17th, they come for a full day and are on site, walking the building, speaking with staff, and meeting with school administrators. And then on November 18th, they're on site again for almost a 5-hour presentation. It's about a 5-hour presentation that's open to the school staff and community, where they will present sort of all of their findings, and they'll make their recommendations and have discussions about modeling and all the things that, and present sort of their final report. If you remember when we did our middle states accreditation, it's kind of very similar, where they spend a couple days here, and then they give sort of an all-encompassing presentation and final report with recommendations. And then with ISM, after they leave, they sort of stay with us as we are making those model decisions, and they're still with us for questions and sort of counseling and consulting as we move through that spring and fall on where we want to go and with what direction and what model and how we move forward. So that's kind of where we're at with that. The agreement would be going to the board next week, and then would hard lock in those dates and start the process of gathering all of the pre-work that they need here in the spring and over the summer.
Great. I don't know if you saw Mrs. McAllister had a question. Is it just State Road, or is it both schools?
It's just State Road. So it's predominantly 7 through 12. But ISM, they're aware of sort of and what we shared is the constraints of 4 to 6 and how we're all on one campus and we share a cafeteria and we share a gym and we share crossover teachers. It's one of the reasons why I reached out to ISM was that they work predominantly with private parochial schools who have many of the same constraints that we have at State Road with shared teachers and shared space. So they were very well versed in coming up with creative solutions on trying to address some of those constraints that have made things difficult for us in the past.
And Brian, I think I heard you say, so they are aware of the building project. Have you shared the different layouts? Specifically, if they base it on that structure, we're looking at, I think it was what, Plan C or what, what I'm talking about. Yeah, is that the one we're going to share with them, or?
I wouldn't need to share that with them until that pre-site stuff, so it wouldn't be due till next October.
Okay, perfect.
We didn't get into specifics. I just shared with them that I don't want to build a schedule that we have to wait till 2025 if that even comes to fruition at that particular point. But that's the goal. I don't want to have to wait that long. So if we could try to do this by 2024 and just know that we have room to grow, or yes, it might be tight one year, but then you'll be able to expand and have some relief the following. And because you have those extra rooms and that extra space and an extra gym, it allows you to do X, Y, and Z after that first year. So they just said that they would build that into sort of their contingency modeling.
Okay, good.
All right.
Anyone else have some questions?
Is there any reason that we have to wait until even 2024? Is there a way to start this fall of 2023?
I think it's more about how much time it takes to do the planning of it and the professional development of it. So if we were to do the site visit in the fall, for us to be able to ensure and go through budgeting and staffing and spacing, and then also provide professional development, and then working with if any decisions were ever made to impact district transportation, things like that, there's a lot of moving pieces to it. And our budget process typically starts in January. So we would have to make that decision rather quickly after their site visit to then be able to do all the legwork for budgeting and staffing. If we were going to be, if there was a large structural change as part of that adoption of whatever model it would be. I think that the recommendation is typically it takes about 18 months.
And does this have only to do with bell schedule, or is this are options up in the air for a different start and end to the school day?
I think options are always up in the air. It's just that's a larger impact of.
No, I understand. I was just curious if that was kind of part of it. Yeah.
You have to have the conversation of the cost benefits of that within the context of district politics and district relations. Any other questions? All right. And next up, I wanted to just give an update related to our intent to return details and some enrollment information. We share enrollment stuff every month at the board meeting, but we just had done our intent to return. It's something that we do every year, and wanted to sort of wrap up some of the details of it and share. So this is what our current intent to return. Every year we ask families to complete the intent to return process, and we know that we do it in February, Marchish, and it's early. Not everybody has a solid understanding of what their solidified plans are for the following school year. But the intent to return really is important for us because it does help us sort of have conversations about what do our grade level class sizes look like? How many people do we need to pull in that March lottery? Are we seeing an early potential exodus of students, and then have conversations about why, and are we able to remedy and fix that? So the top right, you can see yes, whether they were yes returning, no not returning, or whether they were still incomplete and blank by grade level. Again, typically we see the highest grade level attrition happen in 3rd grade, 6th grade, and 8th grade. And that's just normal. I then went back and tried to look at what were our return and withdrawal request rates year over year. So were we seeing less of an initial intent to return no answer as compared to previous years? You can see that in the bottom right. So I was able to pull data back to the 17-18 school year and included a percent of students who had said no, or that they were planning to withdraw during the intent to return window. So the sort of asterisk here is these things change. We've had obviously families who have said, yes, I plan on returning, and then they withdraw at the end of the spring or in the summer. And we've had families who said no on this, I don't plan on returning, and they change their mind as well. It's just sort of like it's a compass that's pointing us in a particular direction for conversations related to enrollment during the open enrollment period. But you can see that we're actually we have been decreasing, which is a good thing, and that's something that I think the board has seen year over year in just our general attrition reports, is that we have consistently been losing less and less students year over year at the end during the school year and over the summer. And then the table on the left, I broke it down because this question always gets asked, is, well, what does it look like by grade level and then by district, so that you can see the number of yes, I'm returning, and no, I do not plan on returning, as well as incompletes by district overall on the left. And again, this is what we utilize to really drive how many seats we offer during the first lottery poll that just happened for kindergarten yesterday. And then next is sort of where our lottery was at. So this was what is included in the board report that for Tuesday. So you can see where our current application submissions were as of the end of February. It is higher. We've had more come in since March 1st. But we were 2 applications short of where we were at the same time the previous year. We were a little bit lower in kindergarten. However, we've been hearing that is a similar trend across school districts, that kindergarten enrollment is still sort of lagging behind. And then you can kind of see, and you can see at the bottom sort of 3 rows, the year to year variance or difference, where we are up and where we are down based on grade level lotteries or application submissions compared to the previous year. We're high, like as you can see, we're significantly higher in 8th grade and 5th grade, lagging a little bit behind in the primary grade levels, but that's not too much room to have to make up as we move through the rest of the spring. What's important to note is that because if we do a good job in retaining the students that we have less offerings for new students the following school year, just based on our grade level capacity numbers. So as we're seeing sort of these numbers dwindle, the no, I don't plan on returning, they do affect the number of available seats in the subsequent grade level the following year. But
So
demand for the school is similar to previous years.
How do you know how many people when do you know how many people you can take off some of these waiting lists?
So we have a rolling average that the business office calculates for attrition. So, over the last 5 years, what's our average attrition based for each grade level transition? So, I have a number that is, over the last X amount of school years, we've averaged, hypothetically, say 22 withdrawals, and I'm just picking a number, from 3rd grade to 4th grade. So what we typically do is we, in the first lottery offering, about half that for new offerings. And then we continue to pull throughout the spring and we sort of do this as we see withdrawals actually happen and attrition actually occur. We go back and then continue to pull more applications to meet the grade level capacity and budget number. That helps us make sure that we don't over enroll sort of mistakenly and then have class sizes that are unmanageable, or a grade level that's not going to fit the physical space in our buildings and our classrooms. Did I explain that to understand?
Yeah, thank you.
Okay. But if you ever look at our sort of our grade level capacity and budget numbers, it's sort of what we look at as like an upside down Christmas tree or upside down tree. The highest number is in kindergarten, and then it takes into consideration some natural attrition from 3rd grade to 4th grade, and then it takes into natural attrition from 6th grade to 7th grade, and then it takes in natural attrition from 8th grade to 9th grade. So it does take into consideration the attrition that we see within divisional transitions, and it accounts for that.
Do you see that, like up in these upper grades that have to lower teens and below, do most of those people end up getting off of the wait list and come in?
No. High school is it's very hard. It's really year to year. And so it really depends. Like one year we may lose a lot of 8th graders to 9th grade and we have room. But for example, last year we really didn't lose many 8th graders. And then we didn't really have the space to pull a number of 9th graders. So it really depends year to year based on the group of kids and the grade level previously and what their academic intentions are for the next school year. That's why we work on rolling averages.
Thank you.
Ryan, with the, I know you don't have the full, on that previous slide, you don't have the full feedback about who's staying and who's not. Are you seeing any? Go ahead.
I mean, we're missing. This has gone out to all kids, so that you can see we still have 246 students who have not been accounted for in this intent to return. Our board policy states that if they don't complete the intent to return process, that they may forfeit their seat at the school. That is included in the board policy. It's not something that we have used, but no. Once we move through the spring, our enrollment department will actually specifically reach out to the no's here who have said no, and provide them with the formal withdrawal paperwork. And then that's where we also get information on why are you choosing the withdrawal that we include in the attrition reports that the board gets the following fall.
Okay. I was just wondering if there was any, and I don't see it here yet, any artificial attrition for the new high school. I don't see that. So
no.
Which is good.
No. All right. And next up is Mrs. Weaver.
Hello, everyone. So I'm just going to take a couple minutes to review our curriculum management plan. So just to bring everybody up to speed, one of the benefits that came out of the pandemic early on when we were home, Ms. Tremmel, Ms. Leonard, and myself participated in a multi-day workshop that helped us better understand not only curricular frameworks, which we're starting to chip away at prior to the pandemic, but just trying to get a better handle on making that a pretty coherent process. So through that, we learned about the curriculum management plan, which essentially takes all things curriculum and instruction and kind of ties it all together in a nice package, and helps us to have very clear expectations. We even have a vision statement tied into this, and brings it all back to strategic planning as well. So as you can see, some of the goals of the curricular management plan are setting the expectations for what students will learn, how we're going to deliver or implement the curriculum once identified, how we're going to monitor. That means looking at data to determine whether or not, whether our frameworks or instructional resources are meaningful and giving us what we expect it to do. And then looking at some of the instructional techniques tied to that as well. I did link in here that we don't have to go through now, but at your leisure, I linked our full curricular management plan. Thanks, Brian. And as you can see, there's still notes and things like that in the margins, because this is a very fluid document. Ms. Tremmel and I are in here almost on a weekly basis, updating and modifying some things. But you can take a look and see you've got our, philosophy in there. If you scroll down just a little bit more, Brian, I think, keep going, like the vision. Oh, go back up. Sorry. The vision of effective classroom instruction. So last year we surveyed the staff and gave them these sentence starters. The teachers create, deeply understand, demonstrate, know how. And we asked for staff feedback, and we kind of plucked out some of the big themes through all of those to help identify a vision for what instruction should look like at Avon Grove Charter.
Do you want the presentation or to keep
Yeah,
going
you
through
can
this?
hop back to the presentation. Yeah, it's a pretty lengthy document. All right, so a couple pieces I wanted to point out and review tonight were one being the curriculum review cycle. So one of the key components to our curricular management plan is looking at the phases of a written curriculum. And I know a lot of our staff that I think are on here now have had some involvement with writing some of their frameworks tied to their courses and their grade level content areas. So this just outlines a very thorough process that we've been following for the past few years on looking at the written curriculum or frameworks in our case, and really making sure that they're doing what we want it to do. So just like the curriculum management plan is a fluid document, so are our curricular frameworks. I don't know if there's any teachers on here that wanted to speak to the frameworks at all that they've been a part of or have used. Feel free to chime in on the impact that that's had in your classrooms. All right. Well, what it does do, and some of the feedback that I have heard, is that it provides a lot of direction for staff. So when we work out our frameworks, and Brian, you can pop to the next screen. I can show. Yeah, that's right. Yeah, can you click on where it says K6 math, and then we'll come back to. Thank you. So what we've been working out every year, and the next slides will show you the kind of where we've been and where we're heading with some of the content areas. But this is an example of one of the first frameworks that we've worked out following our curricular management plan, and that was K5 math. So we took that on, and as you can see through the work we did initially in the Department of Teaching and Learning, is we looked at the standards pretty critically, looked at the eligible content in these areas, and really mapped out the components of the framework that we thought would be most valuable for staff that they can refer to as they're teaching their courses. Then once we had, I guess, the skeleton of what we thought could work for teachers, we went to our grade levels and our content area leads and got their impact, got their input on the frameworks. And then we spent, after a year of kind of writing them and working out a lot of the logistics, we put them into practice, and that's your implementation stage. And again, a very live, fluid document. Looks really good on paper, but sometimes when you go and use it, it doesn't. So throughout the way, we're constantly looking for feedback from staff on how it's going and how we can strengthen it for everybody. Thank you. So if you look to kind of where we are in those 4 stages of the written curriculum cycle, for this current school year, we have high school ELA, foreign language, and algebra 1 and 2 that are in the planning stages. So their staff is working mostly with Ms. Tremmel on what that looks like. So building out those frameworks, chipping away at those components that are in the frameworks. Then this current year, the implementation, actually using them, we have K-8 math, 7-8 math, and dance. And like I said, we started with K-6 a few years ago with our framework. So they're obviously the furthest along in the cycle. And this is more the evaluation period. So we're looking at the data more critically because we've had the frameworks in place over the past few years. And we're looking at the programs associated with the frameworks that we've been using to make sure it's really meeting our needs. And kind of coinciding with that, we tried to align everything in a nice cohesive way. Going through the evaluation and then into the revision stage for next year, we're also looking at math programming, K-6 math programming for next year. So we're working out what a pilot program would look like. We're starting to review some elementary math programs. Ed Reports is something we reference a lot. If you're not familiar, that's a great resource, a great place to go if you want to see if programs that you're using or programs you're interested are being deemed as effective. They take a lot of data into consideration in making those determinations. You can go to the next one, Brian. So this gives us a snapshot of where we are next year. You can see that everybody from the previous slide kind of bumped down to the next piece of the cycle. And we'll be looking at the planning stages for K-8 science, which includes STEM and environmental science, elementary music, and then K-12 PE and health. Okay, and then lastly, if you get a chance to look at the curricular management plan, there's a component in there about instructional resources. So this is another piece of that we're looking to kind of strengthen and making sure that we're going about looking at our instructional resources in a logical way instead of just saying, oh, I heard my friend at such and such school uses this program. I think it's great. Let's just use it. No, we should really be looking at these programs, making sure they're aligning to our standards and our eligible content and meeting the best needs of our students at Avon Grove Charter. So Kim and I have been spending the past few weeks looking at what criteria we're looking to use when investigating instructional resources. So we're going to kind of put these core components to the test as we start reviewing some K-6 math programs in the next 6-8 months or so. And then looking at how we're going to potentially roll out a pilot program, which would take place all next year, and then look at the end of next year for a final determination. I'm sorry, I think when I said math, it's ELA, my fault. I think that's the last one, right, Brian?
Yep, that's the last slide.
Okay. So I don't know if there's any questions on that. Again, I would highly suggest taking a look at the curricular management plan so you can see all the pieces to it. That make a little more sense.
And those that's the update that we had for those 4 major sort of initiatives that are going on.
And Jen, if they want to look at that curriculum management plan, where can they get it?
Brian, where will this be posted? They could pull it from Board Docs.
I'll post this back to Board Docs.
Okay.
And I can also, I think everyone's on the calendar invite, right? I can send them a link.
Just
Yep.
So if they want to see it, that would be great.
Mhm.
Thank you. All right. So is there anything else that we need to go over? Any questions from the group? Everyone's quiet tonight. All right, Brian, when's our next meeting? It is, I'm trying to pull up my calendar. Not working.
April 12th.
April 12th. All right, great. If there's nothing else, we'll go ahead and adjourn, and we'll see everyone in April.
Great. Thanks, everyone.
All right, take care.
Have a good night.